Well, shalom, shalom. Welcome, welcome, world changers. And thanks again, Hannah, for the beautiful music. That was amazing. Thank you for blessing us with your talent. Today, we are going to finish off Genesis chapter 31. We're going to be reading from verse 43, speaking about Jacob's covenant with Laban, and going to be going into the legends of the Jews as well. And also chapter 32, one of the most amazing passages of the entirety of Scripture, actually, when Jacob himself sees the face of God. And he calls the place Peniel, which means the face of God. So we got lots to talk about here. What does the Gospel of John have to say about seeing the face of God? Well, we'll talk about that as well. And for some of you, that may surprise you what it says there. All right, so as always, I pray that everything that we share here today would be a great blessing to you, increase your knowledge of the Scriptures, your knowledge of the things of heaven, your relationship with God, and your knowledge of the truth. Amen, amen. Okay, so those of you that are listening to this live, if you have any questions, comments, especially in regards to what we're reading tonight in the book of Genesis, Jacob, this kind of stuff, feel free to drop those in the live chat. If you have any prayer requests, we would be honored to pray for you. So please drop those prayer requests in the live chat if you have any. We will get to those ASAP. Speaking of the live chat, see what we got going on here. We got Calamento says shalom to all. Randy says shalom. Seek the Lord says shalom. Hubert says shalom. And John says hello. Well, shalom, shalom, shalom. Welcome, welcome, y'all. And blessings multiplied to you and your families. So let's begin. I am going to read again from the WEB translation. And I'm also going to be reading from the Legends of the Jews. And I am doing this because the Legends of the Jews is, it's very convenient, really, for lack of a better word, because it's got all of these extra biblical texts all wrapped up into one. And it's just easy to read. And again, it's not that I say that every single thing it says here is 100%, but I do believe that we can certainly find a lot of truth and inspiration within that text. 13 above says hello, 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 welcome and blessings multiplied to you and your family. Good to see you. All right, so anybody that you guys know of that would be interested in joining us for this study, and any lover of Scripture, share the live stream with anybody that you know of that may enjoy listening to the reading of Scripture, and also a very interesting take from the quote-unquote the Legends of the Jews as well on this given portion of Scripture. A little bit of an overview. We will be talking about Jacob's covenant with Laban. Also, Jacob wrestles with God, and how Jacob saw the face of God, as well as how Jacob feared Esau as well. So we got lots here to talk about. And again, looking into the Legends of the Jews, I'm sure that would give us some very interesting things, some food for thought, to say the least. All right, let's get into this, guys. We have on the left-hand side the book of Genesis, chapter 31, verse 43. On the right-hand side, I have the Legends of the Jews. I'm getting the Legends of the Jews, by the way, to give credit where credit's due, from sacred-texts.com. Okay, and I'm reading from book 1, chapter 6, a little bit more than halfway through the chapter. But let's start with Genesis chapter 31 first. Jacob's covenant with Laban. In verse 43, it says, Laban answered Jacob, the daughters are my daughters, and the children are my children. The flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. What can I do today to these, my daughters, or to their children whom they have borne? Now come, let's make a covenant, you and I. Let it be for a witness between me and you. Jacob took a stone and set it up for a pillar. Jacob said to his relatives, gather stones. They took stones and made a heap. They ate there by the heap. Laban called it Yagar Sahadutha, but Jacob called it Galeed. Laban said, "This heap is witness between me and you today." Therefore it was named Galeed and Mizpah, for he said, "Yahweh watch between me and you when we are absent one from another. If you afflict my daughters, or if you take my wives in addition to my daughters, or if you take wives in addition to my daughters, no man is with us. Behold, God is witness between me and you." Unquote. Laban said to Jacob, "See this heap, and see the pillar which I have set between me and you. May this heap be a witness, and the pillar be a witness, that I will not pass over this heap to you, and that you will not pass over this heap and this pillar to me for harm. The God of Abraham and the God of Nahor and the God of their father judge between us." Then Jacob sware by the fear of his father Isaac. Jacob offered a sacrifice in the mountain and called his relatives to eat bread. They ate bread and stayed all night in the mountain. Early in the morning, Laban rose up and kissed his sons and his daughters and blessed them. Laban departed and returned to his place. Okay, and we got Johnson says, "Hello." Well, hello. Welcome and blessings multiplied to you. Good to see you. So what I'm going to do here, so we read this portion of Genesis, and I'm going to, I always want to read Genesis first, and then we're going to get into the legends of the Jews. Now, the Legends of the Jews is a book that is, Johnson says, I just see your live stream notification. I love your videos. Well, thank you very much, Johnson. Appreciate that. Blessings to you. And I'm glad that my videos have been a blessing to you. It's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So, somebody might say, well, why are you reading from the Legends of the Jews? We don't go by the Legends of the Jews. We go by the Bible. Well, you know what? We can't really fully understand everything that quote-unquote the Bible says without extra biblical information, right? And so the Legends of the Jews does provide some of this extra biblical information. Just because it's extra biblical, in other words, just because it's not in the Bible doesn't mean it's false, okay? There are a lot of things that are not in the Bible, but it's still true. Now, am I saying that the Legends of the Jews are 100% true? Absolutely not. I'm not saying that, but I'm not saying it's all false either. What I am saying is that it's worth studying. It's worth reading and thinking about, at least. I think we can get a lot of inspiration from this material, and I think we can mine some truth out of it. Johnson says, "That's why I'm watching your live stream right now." Well, great, awesome, good to see you. Yes, awesome. Blessings. Yeah, so the Legends of the Jews is, as it says here in the very beginning of the Legends of the Jews on sacred-text.com, it says here, well, first of all, it was compiled over 100 years ago. It says this is a massive collation of Haggadah, the traditions which have grown up surrounding the biblical narrative. These stories and bits of layered detail are scattered throughout the Talmud and the Midrash and other sources, including oral. Okay, so, this is one of the reasons why we are reading this, because it's from a lot of these different sources. Johnson says, "What are your thoughts on the Gospel of Thomas? I love that gospel. Should I follow that gospel?" My thoughts on the Gospel of Thomas? Well, I would say that I know a lot of people don't like the Gospel of Thomas. I'm not with those people. I know a lot of people say that the Gospel of Thomas is a Gnostic gospel. It's like, oh no, it's taboo. Don't even read the Gospel of Thomas. That's not in the Bible. That's a Gnostic gospel. Well, really, I believe that the Gospel of Thomas is not as Gnostic as the Gospel of John is. I believe that the Gospel of John and even Paul's epistles are more Gnostic in a sense than the Gospel of Thomas. Yeah, Johnson says it's not Gnostic. I agree, 100%. Yeah, actually, Johnson, in your after we're done the live stream here, if you wish to go on some kind of if you wish to do a little bit more binging on some of the videos here, if you search my channel for the Gospel of Thomas, I read through every single word of it, and I commented as I went. We did this on a live stream a little while ago. So I read through the Gospel of Thomas in its entirety. I think you might enjoy that. Johnson says it's only 114 sayings of Jesus. It's very interesting, yes. And I do believe that the Gospel of Thomas has truth in it as well. Yes, thanks, Johnson. Appreciate that. So let's get into the legends of the Jews, okay? Now, I've said this before, but I do believe, we know almost for certain that the Legends of the Jews does contain material from the book of Jasher especially, as well as other books. I believe the book of Jasher could almost be considered to be Midrash anyway. Anyways, let's read this portion in regards to the covenant with Laban in the Legends of the Jews. It says, Jacob departed and crossed the Euphrates and set his face toward Gilead. For the Holy Spirit revealed to him that God would bring help there to his children in the days of Jephthah. Meanwhile, the shepherds of Haran observed that the well, which had been filled to overflowing since the arrival of Jacob in their place, ran dry suddenly. For 3 days they watched and waited in the hope that the waters would return in the same abundance as before. Disappointed, they finally told Laban of the misfortune, and he divined at once that Jacob had departed from there, for he knew that the blessing had been conferred upon Haran only for the sake of his son-in-law's merits. On the morrow, in other words, the next day, Laban rose early, assembled all the people of the city, and pursued Jacob with the intention of killing him when he overtook him. Well, that's quite the that's quite the anger there. I mean, going from loving Jacob and giving Jacob your daughters, to wife, and having Jacob serve you basically as a servant or almost like a slave for 14 years, and all of a sudden now you're going to overtake him to kill him. Wow. It says here, but the archangel Michael appeared unto him and bade him to take heed unto himself that he do not do the least unto Jacob, else he would suffer death himself. Okay, so I think we read this last night, didn't we? Didn't we read this last night? Maybe not. Well, let's read this again since we just read the. Let me know, guys. For those of you who were with me last night, did we read this portion last night? Let me know in the live chat. Okay, it says, but the archangel Michael appeared unto him and bade him take heed unto himself that he do not the least unto Jacob, else he would suffer death himself. This message from heaven came to Laban during the night, for when in extraordinary cases God finds it necessary to reveal himself unto the heathen, he does it only in the dark, clandestinely, as it were, while he shows himself to the prophets of the Jews openly during the daylight. Laban accompanied the journey in 1 day, for which Jacob had taken 7. And he overtook him at the mountain of Gilead. When he came upon Jacob, he found him in the act of praying and giving praise to God. Immediately Laban fell to remonstrating with his son-in-law for having stolen away unawares to him. He showed his true character when he said, quote, "It is in the power of my hand to do you hurt, but the God of your father spake unto me yesternight, saying, Take heed to yourself that you speak not to Jacob either good or bad." This is the way of the wicked. They boast of evil, of the evil they can do. Laban wanted to let Jacob know that only the dream warning him against doing anything that was harmful to Jacob prevented him from carrying out the wicked design he had formed against him. Laban continued to take Jacob to task and concluded with the words, quote, "And now, though you would needs be gone, because you long after your father's house, yet why have you stolen my gods?" And when he pronounced the last words, his grandchildren interrupted him, saying, "We are ashamed of you, grandfather, that in your old age you should use such words as my gods." Laban searched all the tents for his idols, going first to the tent of Jacob, which was Rachel's at the same time, for Jacob always dwelt with his favorite wife. Finding nothing, he went from there to Leah's tent and to the tents of the two handmaids, and, noticing that Rachel was feeling about here and there, his suspicions were aroused, and he entered her tent a second time. He would now have found what he was looking for if a miracle had not come to pass. The teraphim were transformed into drinking vessels, and Laban had to desist from his fruitless search. Now Jacob, who did not know that Rachel had stolen her father's teraphim in order to turn him aside from his idolatrous ways, was wroth with Laban and began to chide with him. In the quarrel between them, Jacob's noble character manifested itself. Notwithstanding his excitement, he did not suffer a single unbecoming word to escape him. He only reminded Laban of the loyalty and devotion with which he had served him, doing for him what none other would or could have done. He said, "I dealt wrongfully with the lion, for God had appointed of Laban's sheep for the lion's daily sustenance, and I deprived him thereof. Could another shepherd have done thus? Yes, the people abused me, calling me robber and sneak thief, for they thought that only by stealing by day and stealing by night could I replace the animals torn by wild beasts. And as to my honesty," he continued, is it likely there is another son-in-law who, having lived with his father-in-law, has not taken some little thing from the household of his father-in-law, a knife or other trifle? But you have felt about all my stuff. What have you found of all your household stuff? Not so much as a needle or a nail." In his indignation and conscious of his innocence, Jacob exclaimed, "With whomsoever you find your gods, he shall not live." Words which contained a curse. The thief was cursed with premature death, and therefore Rachel had to die in giving birth to Benjamin. Wow. Isn't that amazing? See, this is something that we don't read of in the book of Genesis, right? The book of Genesis does not tell us these details. Like, we read in the book of Genesis that Rachel did die like a premature death. But, again, it takes this kind of extra biblical material to kind of sew it all together for us. So Jacob cursed the quote-unquote thief with premature death. Therefore, Rachel had to die in giving birth to Benjamin. Right, so we know that Jacob cursed the thief with premature death in the book of Genesis, and we know that Rachel died prematurely, but it doesn't explicitly tell us that Rachel died because of the curse that Jacob had spoken. Isn't this amazing? So it says here, indeed, the curse would have taken effect at once had it not been the wish of God that Rachel should bear Jacob his youngest son. After the quarrel, the two men made a treaty, and with his gigantic strength, Jacob set up a huge rock as a memorial, and a heap of stones as a sign of their covenant. In this matter, Jacob followed the example of his fathers, who likewise had covenanted with heathen nations, Abraham with the Jebusites and Isaac with the Philistines. Therefore Jacob did not hesitate to make a treaty with the Arameans. Jacob summoned his sons, calling them brothers, for they were his peers in piety and strength, and he bade them cast up heaps of stones. Thereupon he swore unto his father-in-law that he would take no wives besides his four daughters, either while they were alive or after their death. And Laban on his part swore that he would not pass over the heaps or over the pillar unto Jacob with hostile intent. And he took the oath by the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, while Jacob made mention of the fear of Isaac. He refrained from using the term, quote, the God of Isaac, because God never unites his name with that of a living person, for the reason that so long as a man has not ended his years, no trust may be put in him, lest he be seduced by the evil inclination. It is true, when he appeared unto Jacob at Bethel, God called himself, quote unquote, the God of Isaac. There was a reason for the unusual phrase. Being blind, Isaac led a retired life within his tent, and the evil inclination had no power over him anymore. But though God had full confidence in Isaac, yet Jacob could not venture to couple the name of God with the name of a living man. Wherefore he took his oath by, quote, the fear of Isaac, unquote. Early in the morning, after the day of covenanting, Laban rose up and kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. But these acts and words of his did not come from the heart. In his innermost thoughts, he regretted that Jacob and his family and his substance had escaped him. His true feelings he betrayed in the message which he sent to Esau at once upon his return to Haran by the hand of his son Beor and 10 companions of his son. The message read, quote, have you heard what Jacob your brother has done unto me, who first came to me naked and bare, and when I went to meet him and took him into my house with honor and brought him up and gave him my 2 daughters for wives and also my two maids? And God blessed him on my account, and he increased abundantly, and had sons and daughters and maidservants, and also an uncommon stock of flocks and herds, camels and donkeys, also silver and gold in abundance. But when he saw that his wealth increased, he left me while I went to shear my sheep, and he rose up and fled in secrecy. And he put his wives and children upon camels, and he led away all his cattle and substance which he acquired in my land, and he resolved to go to his father Isaac to the land of Canaan. And he did not suffer me to kiss my sons and daughters, and he carried away my daughters as captives of the sword. And he also stole my gods and fled. And now I have left him in the mountain of the brook of Jabbok. He and all belonging to him, not a jot of his substance is lacking. If it be your wish to go to him, go, and there you will find him, and you can do unto him as your soul desires, unquote. Jacob had no need to fear either Laban or Esau, for on his journey he was accompanied by 2 angel hosts, one going with him from Haran to the borders of the Holy Land, where he was received by the other host, the angels of Palestine. Each of these hosts consisted of no less than 600,000 angels, and when he beheld them, Jacob said, you belong neither to the host of Esau, who is preparing to go to out to war against me, nor to the host of Laban, who is about to pursue me again. You are the hosts of the holy angel. You are the hosts of the holy angels sent by the Lord." Unquote. And he gave the name Mahanaim, double host, to the spot on which the second army relieved the first. Okay, so moving on over here, that finishes the section there in the Legends of the Jews of that. So let's go back over to Genesis chapter 32, and we'll read here from verse 1. It says, "Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When he saw them, Jacob said, 'This is God's army.' He called the name of that place Mahanaim. Jacob sent messengers in front of him to Esau, his brother, to the land of Seir, the field of Edom. He commanded them, saying, 'This is what you shall tell my lord Esau. This is what your servant Jacob says. I have lived as a foreigner with Laban and stayed until now. I have cattle, donkeys, flocks, male servants and female servants, and I have sent to tell my lord that I may find favor in your sight.'" Unquote. The messengers returned to Jacob, saying, "We came to your brother Esau. He is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him." Then Jacob was greatly afraid and was distressed. He divided the people who were with him, along with the flocks, the herds, and the camels, into 2 companies. He said, "If Esau comes to the one company and strikes it, then the company which is left will escape." Jacob said, "God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, Yahweh, who said to me, 'Return to your country and to your relatives, and I will do you good,' I'm not worthy of the least of all the loving kindnesses and of all the truth which you have shown to your servant. For with just my staff I crossed over this Jordan, and now I have become 2 companies. Please deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he come and strike me and the mothers with the children. You said, 'I will surely do you good, and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which can't be counted because they are so many.' He stayed there that night and took from that which he had with him a present for Esau his brother, 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milk camels and their colts, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 fowls. He delivered them into the hands of his servants, every herd by itself, and said to his servants, 'Pass over me and put a space between herd and herd.' He commanded the foremost, saying, 'When Esau my brother meets you and asks you, saying, Whose are you? Where are you going? Whose are these before you? Then you shall say, They are your servant Jacob's. It is a present sent to my lord Esau. Behold, he also is behind us. He commanded also the second and the third, and all that followed the herds, saying, This is how you shall speak to Esau when you find him. You shall say, Not only that, but behold, your servant Jacob is behind us. For he said, I will appease him with the present that goes before me, and afterward I will see his face. Perhaps he will accept me. So the present passed over before him, and he himself stayed that night in the camp. Okay. All right, guys. Give me just a couple minutes, guys. I'll be right back. Thank you for your patience, guys. I appreciate that. All right, let's move on with the book of Genesis. Jacob wrestles with God. Verse 22. He rose up that night and took his two wives, and his 2 children, and his 11 sons, and crossed over the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them over the stream, and sent them over that which he had. And sent over that which he had. Jacob was left alone and wrestled with a man there until the breaking of the day. When he saw that he didn't prevail against him, the man touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was strained as he wrestled. The man said, "Let me go, for the day breaks." Jacob said, I won't let you go unless you bless me. He said to him, "What is your name?" He said, "Jacob." He said, "Your name will no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have fought with God and with men and have prevailed." Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." And he said, "Why is it that you ask what my name is?" So he blessed him there. Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for he said, "I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved." The sun rose on him as he passed over Peniel, and he limped because of his thigh. Therefore the children of Israel don't eat the sinew of the hip, which is on the hollow of the thigh, to this day, because he touched the hollow of Jacob's thigh in the sinew of the hip. All right. Back over to the Legends of the Jews. It says, Jacob and Esau prepare to meet. Okay, just give me a second here. The message of Laban awakened Esau's old hatred toward Jacob with increased fury, and he assembled his household, consisting of 60 men. With them and 340 inhabitants of Seir. He went forth to do battle with Jacob and killed him. He divided his warriors into 7 cohorts, giving to his son Eliphaz his own division of 60, and putting the other 6 divisions under as many of the Horites. While Esau was hastening onward to meet Jacob, the messengers which Laban had sent to Esau came to Rebekah and told her that Esau and his 400 men were about to make war upon Jacob, with the purpose of slaying him and taking possession of all he had. Anxious lest Esau should execute his plan while yet Jacob was on the journey, he hastily dispatched 72 of the retainers of Isaac's household to give him help. Jacob, tarrying on the banks of the brook Jabbok, rejoiced at the sight of these men, and greeting them with the words, "This is God's helping host." Wherefore he called the place of their meeting Mahanaim, that's host. After the warriors sent by Rebekah had satisfied his questions regarding the welfare of his parents, they delivered his mother's message unto him like this, quote, "I have heard, my son, that your brother Esau has gone forth against you on the road with men of the children of Seir the Horite. And therefore, my son, hearken to my voice, and take counsel with yourself what you will do. And when he comes up to you, supplicate him, and do not speak roughly to him, and give him a present from that which you possess, and from what God has favored you with. And when he asks you concerning your affairs, conceal nothing from him. Perhaps he may turn from his anger against you, and you will thereby save your soul, you and all belonging to you. For it is your duty to honor him, since he is your older brother. And when Jacob heard the words of his mother, which the messengers had spoken to him, he lifted up his voice and wept bitterly, and did as his mother commanded him. He sent messengers to Esau to placate him, and they said to him, Thus speaks your servant Jacob, my lord. Don't think that the blessing which my father bestowed upon me profited me. 20 years I served Laban, and he deceived me, and changed my hire 10 times, as you well know. Yet did I labor sorely in his house, and God saw my affliction, my labor, and the work of my hands, and afterward he caused me to find grace and favor in the sight of Laban. And through God's great mercy and kindness I acquired oxen and donkeys and cattle, and men servants and maidservants. And now I am coming to my country and to my home, to my father and mother, who are in the land of Canaan. And I have sent to let my Lord know all this in order to find favor in the eyes of my Lord, so that he may not imagine that I have become a man of substance, or that the blessing with which my father blessed me has benefited me. Furthermore spake the messengers, quote, Why do you envy me in respect to the blessing wherewith my father blessed me? Is it that the sun shines in my land, or and not in yours? Or does the dew and rain fall only upon my land and not upon yours? If my father blessed me with the dew of heaven, he blessed you with the fatness of the earth. And if he spoke to me, Peoples will serve you, he has said to you, By your sword you shall live. How long then will you continue to envy me? Come now, let us set up a covenant between us, that we will share equally all the vexations that may occur. Esau would not agree to this proposal, and his friends dissuaded him therefrom, saying, quote, Accept not these conditions, for God has said to Abraham, Know of a surety that your seed shall be a stranger in the land that is not theirs, and shall serve the people thereof, and the aliens shall afflict them 400 years. Wait therefore until Jacob and his family go down into Egypt to pay off this debt. Jacob also sent word to Esau, saying, Though I dwelt with that heathen of heathen, Laban, yet have I not forgotten my God, but I will fulfill the 613 commandments of the Torah. If my mind be set upon peace, you will find me ready for peace. But if your desire be war, you will find me ready for war. I have with me men of valor and strength. They have but to utter a word, and God fulfills it. I tarried with Laban until Joseph should be born, who is destined to subdue you. And though my descendants be held in bondage in this world, yet a day will come when they will rule over their rulers. Unquote. In reply to all these gentle words, Esau spoke with arrogance, quote, Surely I have heard, and truly it has been told unto me what Jacob has been to Laban, who brought him up in his house and gave him his daughters for wives, and he begot sons and daughters, and abundantly increased in wealth and riches in Laban's house, and with his help. And when he saw that his wealth was abundant and his riches were great, he fled with all he fled with all belonging to him from Laban's house, and he carried away Laban's daughters from their father as captives of the sword, without telling him of it. And not only to Laban has Jacob done thus, but also unto me has he done so, and he has twice supplanted me. And shall I be silent? Now I have this day come with my camp to meet him, and I will do unto him according to the desire of my heart. The messengers dispatched by Jacob now returned to him, and reported these words of Esau unto him. They also told him that his brother was advancing against him with an army consisting of 400 crowned heads, each leading a host of 400 men. Quote, it is true, you are his brother, and you treat him as a brother should, unquote, they said to Jacob. Quote, but he is an Esau. You must be made aware of his villainy, unquote. Jacob bore in mind the promise of God, and he would bring him back to his father's house in peace. Yet the report about his brother's purpose alarmed him greatly. A pious man may never depend upon promises of earthly good. God does not keep the promise if he is guilty of the smallest conceivable trespass, and Jacob feared that he might have forfeited happiness by reason of a sin committed by him. Moreover, he was anxious lest Esau be the one favored by God, inasmuch as he had these 20 years been fulfilling 2 divine commands that Jacob had to disregard. Esau had been living in the Holy Land, Jacob outside of it. The former had been in attendance upon his parents, the latter dwelling at a distance from them. And much as he feared defeat, Jacob also feared the reverse, that he might be victorious over Esau, or might even slay his brother, which would be as bad as to be slain by him. And he was depressed by another apprehension, that his father had died, for he reasoned that Esau would not take such warlike steps against his own brother were his father still alive. When his wives saw the anxiety that possessed Jacob, they began to quarrel with him and reproach him for having taken them away from their father's house, though he knew that such danger threatened from Esau. Then Jacob determined to apply the 3 means that might save him from the fate impending. He would cry to God for help, appease Esau's wrath with presents, and hold himself in readiness for war if the worst came to the worst. He prayed to God, quote, if you, God, of my father Abraham, O God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Isaac, God of all who walk in the ways of the pious and do like unto them, I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies and of all the truth which you have shown unto your servant, O Lord of the world. As you did not suffer Laban to execute his evil designs against me, so also bring to nothing the purpose of Esau, who desires to slay me. O Lord of the world, in your Torah, which you will give unto us on Mount Sinai, it is written, and whether it be a cow or you shall not kill it and her young both in one day. If this wretch should come and murder my children and their mothers at the same time, who would then desire to read your Torah, which you will give us on Mount Sinai? And yet you did speak for the sake of your merits and the merits of your fathers, I will do good unto you. And in the future world, your children shall be as numerous as the sand of the sea. As Jacob prayed for his own deliverance, so also he prayed for the salvation of his descendants, that they might not be annihilated by the descendants of Esau. Such was the prayer of Jacob when he saw Esau approaching from afar, that God heard his petition and looked upon his tears and gave him the assurance that for his sake his descendants too would be redeemed from all distress. Then the Lord sent 3 angels, and they went before Esau, and they appeared unto Esau and his people as hundreds and thousands of men riding upon horses. They were furnished with all sorts of weapons, and divided into 4 columns. And one division went on, and they found Esau coming with 400 men, and the division ran toward them and terrified them. Esau fell off his horse in alarm, and all his men separated from him in great fear, while the approaching column shouted after them, Truly we are the servants of Jacob, the servant of God, and who can stand against us? Esau then said unto them, O then my Lord and my brother Jacob is your Lord, whom I have not seen these 20 years. And now that I have come, now that I have this day come to see him, do you treat me in this manner? The angels answered, As the Lord lives, were not Jacob your brother, we had not left one remaining of you and your people, but on account of Jacob we will do nothing to you. Unquote. This division passed from Esau, and when they had gone from there about a league, the second division came toward him, and they also did unto Esau and his men as the first had done unto them. And when they permitted him to go on, the third came and did like the first. And when the third had passed also, Esau still continued with his men on the road to Jacob. The fourth division came and did to them as the others had done. And Esau was greatly afraid of his brother, because he thought that the 4 columns of the army which he had encountered were the servants of Jacob. After Jacob had made an end of praying, he divided all that journeyed with him into 2 companies, and he set over them Damasek and Alinus, the 2 sons of Eleazar, the bondmen of Abraham, and their sons. Jacob's example teaches us not to conceal the whole of our fortune in one hiding place, else we run the danger of losing everything at one stroke. Of his cattle he sent a part to Esau as a present, first dividing it into 3 droves in order to impress his brother more. When Esau received the first drove, he would think he had the whole gift that had been sent to him, and suddenly he would be astonished by the appearance of the second portion, and again by the third. Jacob knew his brother's avarice only too well. The men who were bearers of Jacob's present to Esau were charged with the following message: This is an offering to my lord Esau from his slave Jacob. But God took these words of Jacob in ill part, saying, You profane what is holy when you call Esau Lord. Jacob excused himself. He was but flattering the wicked in order to escape death at his hands. Jacob wrestles with the angel. The servants of Jacob went before him with the present for Esau, and he followed with his wives and his children. As he was about to pass over the ford of Jabbok, he observed a shepherd who likewise had sheep and camels. The stranger approached Jacob and proposed that they should ford the stream together and help each other move their cattle over. And Jacob assented on the condition that his possessions should be put across first. In the twinkling of an eye, Jacob's sheep were transferred to the other side of the stream by the shepherd. Then the flocks of the shepherd were to be moved by Jacob. But no matter how many he took over to the opposite bank, always there remained some on the hither shore. There was no end to the cattle, though Jacob labored all the night through. At last he lost patience, and he fell upon the shepherd and caught him by the throat, crying out, "Oh, you wizard! You wizard! At night no enchantment succeeds." The angel thought, "Very well, let him know once for all with whom he has had dealings." And with his finger he touched the earth, whence fire burst forth. But Jacob said, "What? Do you think that will frighten me? Who am made of holy fire?" The shepherd was no less a personage than the archangel Michael, and in his combat with Jacob, he was assisted by the whole host of angels under his command. He was on the point of inflicting a dangerous wound upon Jacob when God appeared, and all the angels, even Michael himself, felt their strength ooze away. Seeing that he could not prevail against Jacob, the archangel touched the hollow of his thigh and injured him. And God rebuked him, saying, Do you act as is unseemly? Do you act as is seemly when you cause a blemish in my priest Jacob?" Michael said in astonishment, "Why, it is I who am your priest." But God said, You are priest in heaven, and he is priest on earth." Thereupon Michael summoned the archangel Raphael, saying, "My comrade, I pray you help me out of my distress, for you are charged with the healing of all disease." And Raphael cured Jacob of the injury Michael had inflicted. The Lord continued to reproach Michael, saying, Why did you do harm unto my firstborn son?" And the archangel answered, quote, "I did it only to glorify you," unquote. And then God appointed Michael as the guardian angel of Jacob and his seed until the end of all generations with these words, "You are a fire, and so is Jacob a fire. You are the head of the angels, and he is the head of the nations. You are supreme over all the angels, and he is supreme over all the peoples. Therefore he who is supreme over all the angels shall be appointed unto him who is supreme over all the peoples, that he may entreat mercy for him from the supreme one over all." Then Michael said to Jacob, "How is it possible that you could prevail against me? The most distinguished of the angels are afraid of Esau." When the day broke, Michael said to Jacob, "Let me go, for the day breaks." But Jacob held him back, saying, "Are you a thief or a gambler with dice that you fear the daylight?" At that moment appeared many hosts of angels, and they called unto Michael, "Ascend, O Michael, the time of song has come. And if you are not in heaven to lead the choir, none will sing." And Michael entreated Jacob with supplications to let him go, for he feared the angels of the Arabot would consume him with fire if he were not there to start the songs of praise at the proper time. Jacob said, "I will not let you go except you bless me." Whereto Michael made reply, "Who is greater, the servant or the son? I am the servant, and you are the son. Why then do you crave my blessing?" Jacob urged as an argument, the angels that visited Abraham did not leave without blessing him. But Michael held they were sent by God for that very purpose, and I was not. Yet Jacob insisted upon his demand that Michael pleaded with him, and Michael pleaded with him, saying, "The angels that betrayed a heavenly secret were banished from their place for 138 years. Do you desire that I should acquaint you with what would cause my banishment likewise?" In the end, the angel nevertheless had to yield. Jacob could not be moved, and Michael took counsel with himself thus, quote, "I will reveal a secret to him, and if God demands to know why I revealed it, I will make answer. Your children stand upon their wishes with you, and you do yield to them. How then could I have left Jacob's wish unfulfilled?" Then Michael spoke to Jacob, saying, "A day will come when God will reveal himself to you, and he will change your name, and I shall be present when he changes it. Your name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. For happy you of woman born, who did enter the heavenly palace and did escape from there with your life." Unquote. And Michael blessed Jacob with the words, "May it be the will of God that your descendants be as pious as you are." At the same time, the archangel reminded Jacob that he had promised to give a tithe of his possessions unto God, and at once Jacob separated 550 head of cattle from his herds, which counted 5,500. Then Michael went on, quote, "But you have sons, and all of them you have are not set apart. And all of them you have not set apart. And of them you have not set apart the 10th." Unquote. Jacob proceeded to pass his sons in review: Reuben, Joseph, Dan, and Gad, being the firstborn. Each of his mother were exempt, and there remained but 8 sons. And when he named them down to Benjamin, he had to go back and begin over again with Simon the 9th and finish with Levi as the 10th. Michael took Levi with him into heaven and presented him before God, saying, "O Lord of the world, this one is your lot, and the 10th belonging unto you." And God stretched forth his hand and blessed Levi with the blessing that his children should be the servants of God on earth as the angels were his servants on high. Michael spoke again. Does not a king provide for the sustenance of his servants? Whereupon God appointed for the Levites all that was holy unto the Lord. Then Jacob spoke to the angel, quote, "My father conferred the blessing upon me that was intended for Esau, and how I desire to know whether you will acknowledge the blessing as mine, or will bring charges against me on account of it." The angel said, "I acknowledge the blessing to be yours by right. You did not gain it by craft and cunning, and I and all the heavenly powers recognize it to be valid. For you have shown yourself master over the mighty powers of the heavens, as over Esau and his legions." And even then, Jacob would not let the angel depart. He had to reveal his name to him first, and the angel made known to him that it was Israel, the name the same name that Jacob would once bear. At last the angel departed after Jacob had blessed him, and Jacob called the place of wrestling Penuel, the same place to which before he had given the name Mahanaim, for both words have but one meaning, the place of encounter with angels. Before I read the next part here, Kubert says, you read earlier about Rachel dying because of the curse he prayed against the thief. Should we not pray against people in fear we love? Should we not pray against people in fear we or loved ones would be affected? It's always good. Thank you, Hubert's very good question. Thank you for your question. I think it's always good to be humble and to be very, very careful about what you say, no matter what. So, I think it's very good to maintain a very good, healthy fear of God and to be very, very careful of what you say. Definitely. Yes. Awesome point there, Kuberts. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes. Amen. Yes. All right. Okay, we'll read. Okay, we'll read one more section of the Legends of the Jews. The meeting between Esau and Jacob. Again, this is on the right-hand side of the screen. It says, at the break of day, the angel left off from wrestling with Jacob. The dawn on that day was of particularly short duration. The sun rose 2 hours before his time, by way of compensation for having set early on the day on which Jacob passed Mount Moriah on his journey to Haran, to induce him to turn aside and lodge for a night on the future temple place. Indeed, the power of the sun on this same day was altogether remarkable. He shone with the brilliance and ardor with which he was invested during the 6 days of the creation, and as he will shine at the end of days, to make whole the halt and the blind among the Jews, and to consume the heathen. This same healing and devastating property he had on that day, too, for Jacob was cured, while Esau and his princes were all but burnt up by his terrible heat. Jacob was in dire need of healing lotions for the injury he had sustained in the encounter with the angel. The combat between them had been grim. The dust whirled up by the scuffle rose to the very throne of God. Though Jacob prevailed against this huge opponent, as big as 1/3 of the whole world, throwing him to the ground and keeping him pinned down, yet the angel had injured him by clutching at the sinew of his hip, which is upon the hollow of the thigh, so that it was dislocated, and Jacob halted upon his thigh. The healing power of the sun restored him. Nevertheless, his children took it upon themselves not to eat the sinew of the hip, which is upon the hollow of the thigh, for they reproached themselves with having been the cause of this mishap. They should not have left him alone in that night. Now, although Jacob had prepared for the worst, for open hostilities even, yet when he saw Esau and his men, he thought it discreet to make separate divisions of the households of Leah, Rachel, and the handmaids, and divide the children unto each of them. And he put the handmaids and their children foremost, and Leah and her children after, and Rachel and Joseph hindermost. It was the stratagem which the fox used with the lion. Once upon a time, the king of the beasts was wroth with his subjects, and they looked here and there for a spokesman who mastered the art of appeasing their ruler. The fox offered himself for the undertaking, saying, I know 300 fables which will allay his fury. His offer was accepted with joy. On the way to the lion, the fox suddenly stood still. In reply to the questions put to him, he said, I have forgotten 300 fables. I have forgotten 100 of the 300 fables. Never mind, said those accompanying him. 200 will serve the purpose. A little way further on, the fox again stopped suddenly and questioned again. He confessed that he had forgotten half of the 200 remaining fables. The animals with him still consoled him that the 100 he knew would be sufficient. But the fox halted a third time, and then he admitted that his memory had failed him entirely, and he had forgotten all the fables he knew, and he advised that every animal approach the king on his own account and endeavor to appease his anger. At first, Jacob had courage enough to enter the lists with Esau in behalf of all with him. Now he came to the conclusion to let each one try to do what he could for himself. However, Jacob was too fond a father to expose his family to the first brunt of the danger. He himself passed over before all the rest, saying, It is better that they attack me than my children. After him came the handmaids and their children. His reason for placing them there was that if Esau should be overcome by passion for the women and try to violate them, he would thus meet the handmaids first, and in the meantime Jacob would have the chance of preparing for more determined resistance in the defense of the honor of his wives. Joseph and Rachel came last, and Joseph walked in front of his mother, though Jacob had ordered the reverse. But the son knew both the beauty of his mother and the lustfulness of his uncle, and therefore he tried to hide Rachel from the sight of Esau. In the vehemence of his rage against Jacob, Esau vowed that he would not slay him with bow and arrow, but would bite him dead with his mouth and suck his blood. But he was doomed to bitter disappointment, for Jacob's neck turned as hard as ivory, and in his helpless fury Esau could but gnash his teeth. The two brothers were like the ram and the wolf. A wolf wanted to tear a ram in pieces, and the ram defended himself with his horns, striking them deep into the flesh of the wolf. Both began to howl. The wolf because he could not secure his prey, and the ram from fear that the wolf renew his attacks. Esau bawled because his teeth were hurt by the ivory flesh of Jacob's neck, and Jacob feared that his brother would make a second attempt to bite him. Esau addressed a question to his brother. Tell me, he said, what was the army I met? For on his march against Jacob, he had had a most peculiar experience with a great host of 40,000 warriors. It consisted of various kinds of troops, armor-clad soldiers walking on foot, mounted on horses, and seated in chariots, and they all threw themselves upon Esau when they met. He demanded to know from where they came, and the strange soldiers hardly interrupted their savage onslaught to reply that they belonged to Jacob. Only when Esau told them that Jacob was his brother did they leave off, saying, Woe to us if our master hears that we did you harm. This was the army and the encounter Esau inspired about as soon as he met his brother. But the army was a host of angels who had the appearance of warriors to Esau and his men. Also, the messengers sent by Esau Also, the messengers sent by Jacob to Esau had been angels, for no mere human being could be induced to go forth and face their recreant. Jacob now gave Esau the presents intended for him, 1/10 of all his cattle, and also pearls and precious stones, and besides, a falcon for the chase. But even the animals refused to give up their gentle master Jacob and become the property of the villain Esau. They all ran away when Jacob wanted to hand them over to his brother. And the result was that the only ones that reached Esau were the feeble and the lame, all that could not make good their escape. At first, Esau declined the presents offered to him. Naturally, that was a mere pretense. While refusing the gifts with words, he held his hand outstretched, ready to receive them. Jacob took the hint and insisted that he accept them, saying, "No, I pray you, if now I have found grace in your sight, then receive my present at my hand. For as much as I have seen your face, as I have seen the face of angels, and you are pleased with me." The closing words were chosen with well-calculated purpose. Jacob wanted Esau to derive the meaning that he had intercourse with angels and to be inspired with awe. Jacob was like the man invited to a banquet by his mortal enemy who has been seeking an opportunity to slay him. When the guest divines the purpose for which he has been brought there, he says to the host, "What a magnificent and delicious meal this is! But once before in my life did I partake of one like it, and that was when I was bidden by the king to his table." Enough to drive terror to the heart of the would-be slayer. He takes good care not to harm a man on such intimate terms with the king as to be invited to his table. Jacob had valid reason for recalling his encounter with the angel, for it was the angel of Esau who had measured his strength with Jacob's and had been overcome. As Esau accepted the presence of Jacob willingly on this first occasion, so he continued to accept them for a whole year. Daily Jacob gave him presents, as on the day of their meeting, for he said, "A gift does blind the eyes of the wise, and how much more does it blind the wicked? Therefore I will give him presents upon presents, perhaps he will let me alone." Besides, he did not attach much value to the possessions which he had acquired outside of the Holy Land. Such possessions are not a blessing, and he did not hesitate to part with them. Beside the presents which Jacob gave to Esau, he also paid out a large sum of money to him for the cave of Machpelah. Immediately upon his arrival in the Holy Land, he sold all that he had brought with him from Haran, and a pile of gold was the proceeds of the sale. He spoke to Esau, saying, "Like me, you have a share in the cave of Machpelah. Will you take this pile of gold for your portion therein? What care I for the cave?" returned Esau. "Gold is what I want." And for his share in Machpelah, he took the gold realized from the sale of the possessions Jacob had accumulated outside of the Holy Land. But God, quote, filled the vacuum without delay, unquote, and Jacob was rich as before. Wealth was not an object of desire to Jacob. He would have been well content in his own behalf and in behalf of his family to resign all earthly treasures in favor of Esau and his family. He said to Esau, I foresee that in future days suffering will be inflicted by your children upon mine. But I do not demur. You may exercise your dominion and wear your crown until the time when the Messiah springs from my loins and receives the rule from you. These words spoken by Jacob will be realized in the days to come, when all the nations will rise up against the kingdom of Edom and take away one city after another from him, one realm after another, until they reach Beit Gubrin. And then the Messiah will appear and assume his kingship. The angel of Edom will flee for refuge to Basra, but God will appear there and slay him. For though Basra is one of the cities of refuge, yet will the Lord exercise the right of the avenger therein. He will seize the angel by his hair, and Elijah will slaughter him, letting the blood spatter the garments of God. All this Jacob had in mind when he said to Esau, Let my Lord, I pray you, pass over before his servant until I come unto my Lord unto Seir. Jacob himself never went to Seir. What he meant was the messianic time when Israel shall go to Seir to take possession thereof. Jacob tarried in Sukkot a whole year, and he opened a house of learning there. Then he journeyed on to Shechem, while Esau betook himself to Seir, saying to himself, How long shall I be a burden to my brother? For it was during Jacob's sojourn at Sukkot that Esau received daily presents from Jacob. And Jacob, after abiding these many years in a strange land, came to Shechem in peace, unimpaired in mind and body. He had forgotten none of the knowledge he had acquired before. The gifts he gave to Esau did not encroach upon his wealth. The injury inflicted by the angel that wrestled with him had been healed, and likewise his children were sound and healthy. Jacob entered Shechem on a Friday, late in the afternoon, and his first concern was to lay out the boundaries of the city, that the laws of the Sabbath might not be transgressed. As soon as he was settled in the place, he sent presents to the notables. A man must be grateful to a city from which he derives benefits. No less did the common people enjoy his bounty. From them he opened a market where he sold all wares at low prices. Also, he lost no time in buying a parcel of ground, for it is the duty of every man of substance who comes to the Holy Land from outside to make himself the possessor of land there. He gave 100 lambs for his estate, 100 yearling sheep, and 100 pieces of money, and received in return a bill of sale, to which he attached his signature, using the words Yod He for it. And then he erected an altar to God upon his land, and he said, You are the Lord of all celestial things, and I am the Lord of all earthly things. But God said, Not even the overseer of the synagogue arrogates privileges in the synagogue, and you assume lordship with a high hand? Forsooth, on the morrow your daughter will go abroad, and she shall be humbled. Thank you, Seek the Lord. Thank you for letting me know. And Calamentos, thank you. And Randy, thank you. Yes. Thanks, guys. Yeah, wasn't that an awesome story? Wasn't that an awesome portion there in the Legends of the Jews? What that's so much there to say about that story. And yeah, Kubert said, no wonder God hated Esau. I think this was in the context of Esau wanting to basically eat Jacob alive. Yeah, that is just absolutely horrific, isn't it? No wonder God hated Esau. Yes, but you see how God, God's always, he set it up so well, right? I mean, he was always on Jacob's side, all things considered, and he saw to it that Jacob got the best, and that Esau, he didn't get the best, did he? Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up with that, guys, for tonight. Lord willing, tomorrow we will read Genesis chapter 33. But you know what? Before I go, before I go, I do want to bring out the thing here in John that says, okay, so John, the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 18. No one has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son who is in the bosom of the Father, he has declared him. So this seems to be a contradiction, right? Because Jacob said that he saw God face to face. He even named the place the face of God. Peniel, it means face of God. So he saw the face of God, and in spite of all that, one could argue as well that Moses saw the face of God as well as perhaps others saw God. Even Jesus himself said, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God, right? Peacemakers, sorry. Pure in heart, what am I saying? Yeah, I was right the first time. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. So Matthew says that the pure in heart will see God, but John puts it in such a way that no one can ever see God. No one's ever seen God. But the story that we just read talks about Jacob seeing God, not just seeing God, but seeing God face to face. So this is the problem, right? So it's either there's a few options we have here. Number one, the author here, which arguably was not, they say from John chapter 1 verses 1 to 18, this was a later edition, or it was an edition by a different author. So this is like the prologue of John, as they call it, which is believed by many to been added by a different author at a different time. Whoever said this, you could say, well, option number one, they're wrong. Option number two, well, I'm trying to think of a way we can make this work. Again, I don't want to shave off the corners of the square peg to try to make it fit a round hole. But do we have any other option here? No one has seen God at any time. I suppose you could say maybe there's some interpretation out there of this that we don't know, and perhaps it's true in a certain way. I mean, you can try to make it fit. Again, I hate to do that kind of thing, but we get this in the Gospel of John and also in 1 John as well, the idea that no one has seen God or no one sees God at any time. However, throughout the other parts of the scriptures, you would say, hey, they all saw God. Well, not they all did, but there's many times throughout. You could say from Adam and Eve, right there, all the way through to to Yeshua, and even beyond that, where people have, it says that people have seen God. So, just to point that out, this is one of the many problems of the Gospel of John, and if you are new to this, I encourage you to listen to the Gospel of John special series that we did several months ago. It's put together in a playlist on the Christopher Enoch channel on YouTube, so you can listen to the Gospel of John. There's a good number of things like this throughout the Gospel of John that is, seemingly contradictory. However, I don't think I'd do it justice by not speaking about that, especially when we're talking about this particular story of Jacob seeing God face to face. Yeah, so again, as a reminder, Genesis chapter 32, verse 30, Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for he said, I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. Okay? So, yeah, so there we have it. I suppose somebody can say about the Gospel of John, well, no one of a certain, no one of a certain group has seen God face to face, or no one of a certain group has seen God, but the way it's worded, no one has seen God at any time. It sounds like an absolute, just, a statement, a generic statement, all-encompassing, all-inclusive statement. No one has seen God at any time. Yeah. I would say, if there's any doubt, go with Genesis and not with the Gospel of John. Genesis is way better, is way more reliable than the Gospel of John is. Okay, guys. All right. Hubert says Jacob had a good heart. Yes, he did. Yes, that's amazing. Thank you, Huberts. All right, so that'll be it for tonight, guys. We'll see you guys again, Lord willing, tomorrow, continuing with Genesis. Continuing with Genesis and in the Legends of the Jews again, and comparing the manuscripts wherever there is, a significant variation. I'm not aware of any significant variation between the manuscripts in the portion that we read tonight. That's the reason why I just read from the one. Of course, there are these minor variations, as you all know of, but nothing really significant as far as I know of. And so that's why I just stuck with Genesis and the Legends of the Jews. All right, guys. Y'all are amazing. Hubert says, thank you, blessings all. Well, thank you, Hubert's blessings multiplied back to you. So we'll see you guys tomorrow, same time, same place. You guys are amazing. Keep on calling on him, and he will show you great and mighty things. Jeremiah 33:3. Love you guys. As always, I pray the Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face to shine upon you. Lift up his countenance upon you, and give you wonderful, wonderful shalom. Amen, amen. We'll see you guys tomorrow.